Howdy there, Isaac here. This what if started quite some time ago as just an April Fool's what if, and now we're here at what I would consider a pretty nice season finale. Zarbon and Pommel have come a long way from how they used to be, and the Cell games, I feel it'll test their newfound ideals. Without further ado, let's see what may have happened if Zarbon became a Z-Fighter. The story starts now. The various Z-Fighters stared down Cell and his group of androids, and though they couldn't sense the synthetic powers, they knew the next few fights would be tough. Much like how the humans were basically there for moral support, many of Zarbon's men figured they wouldn't be of much use, even with an extra year of training. But there were several who agreed to fight in this tournament. The contestants would all be the normal people: Goku, Gohan, Vegeta, Trunks, and then there were Zarbon's men, consisting of Iru, Blueberry, A A-Pool, Pommel, and Zarbon himself. There was also the dark horse candidate, Tien. While he hadn't increased too much in power, he wanted to fight, to at least prove that the Earthlings hadn't fallen that far behind, something all the other warriors could respect. Goku, like always, volunteered to go first, and the androids all wanted to fight him, though the Cell Juniors are fine with not doing so. 16 and 13 got into a particularly aggressive spat over who went first, as while 16 was newer and far stronger than his elder brother in their base forms, Cell had done some fine-tuning in his 2 weeks of waiting, meaning the trucker wasn't too far behind. Eventually, Cell stepped in and ordered 13 to stand down, since he wanted to see just how strong Goku had gotten. The android, having no choice in the matter, listened, though Cell did say he could take Gohan as a consolation prize, which 13 settled for, as he knew beating Gohan would greatly anger Goku. A-Pool stepped forward and offered to take on 14, and while Zarbon was about to volunteer to take on 15, Tien stepped forward. The commander knew the Triclops had something to prove, but was taking on an improved android really something he thought he could do? Well, at least if Tien perished, they could always use the Dragon Balls, but still. Zarbon decided to back down and let the human take on 15, despite his reservations. And with that out of the way, the rest of the fighters had to settle on fighting Cell Juniors, something Vegeta wasn't too happy about, though he was determined to win and challenge Cell. The first fight to take place was Goku vs 16, a fight the android was looking forward to. But for as strong as 16 was, even his slight improvements weren't enough to compete with Goku. Every time the android thought he had Goku, the Saiyans seemed to power up more, eventually overtaking 16 in both power and speed. His sensors could keep up, but his body wasn't fast enough, leading to Goku eventually knocking him out of the ring, much to Cell's dissatisfaction. Goku, I'm not sure if you heard me, but these matches are to the death. Knocking him out of the ring does nothing. Oh, come on, look at him, Cell. He's in no position to fight. I've won, but I don't want to destroy him just because you say so. Or would you rather I quit the tournament? Cell and Goku stared each other down, the tension in the air so thick that you could cut through it like space butter. Finally, the Bugman sighed and backed down, saying he'd accept the ring out. But 16, oh, he wasn't having any of this. While Goku wasn't paying attention, he rushed to Saiyan and wrapped his arms around his smaller frame, just barely able to hold him in place. Those parameters were unacceptable, Cell. Jiro programmed me to beat Goku at all costs. Goku struggled and wriggled around, trying his best to break free, but the android had a grip like iron. 16 began to glow as his bomb activated, and his countdown started. The other Z-Fighters were hesitant to jump in, even Gohan, as he thought his father would escape at any moment. But just as 16 reached the final second, Cell suddenly appeared behind him. In one swift motion, 16's head was lopped off, Then his body was wrenched off of Goku and thrown into the distance, a large explosion sounding off, the shockwaves so powerful that Jimmy Firecracker and Hercule were thrown several hundred meters back. 16 was still alive, but Cell didn't bother destroying him, and simply began to walk away. You lost. Goku moves forward in the tournament. Next match. Now. 13 happily jumped into the ring, kicking 16's head towards a Cell Jr., namely Vegeta Jr., telling him to just watch as he stamped out Goku's brat. In 13's head, he'd easily win, and killing Gohan would make his revenge against Goku all the sweeter. He couldn't wait to see Goku's face as he began to beat Gohan. But, of course, as the fight started, 13 couldn't get any headway. Sure, he could hit Gohan around the ring, but his hits weren't doing any actual damage, while every little parry, punch, and kick hurt 13 immensely, something Gohan seemingly noticed and toned down as their fight progressed. Now this only made the android even angrier. Was this mere child taking pity on him? Trying to go easy so he didn't break like 16? Or even worse, was he toying with him? The android powered up his most powerful attack, the SS Deadly Bomber. However, even this doesn't manage to put a scratch on Gohan. The Saiyan does somewhat struggle to catch the blast, but he does manage to do so, and throws it away, the sphere passing right past Cell's face and exploding behind him. After seeing this, 13 just falls to his knees and begins hitting the ground, cursing Gohan in his own mechanical inferiority. If only he had his perfect form, then he'd easily destroy this brat with one swing. Wait, that was it. Maybe he could achieve said form. All right, I resign. There's no way I could possibly beat son Gohan, but I still want to see this play out from the sidelines. What you say, Cell? Let me stand by while my fellow androids fight their own fights? 13 prayed Cell allowed this, and hopefully wouldn't notice his plan. Fine, but from now on there will be no more resignations. I want to at least see some knockouts, if not straight up massacres. To emphasize my point, I will be joining the tournament. You there, Vegeta Jr., you're out. The rest of you, watch closely. Cell Jr., the same Vegeta Jr. from earlier, is relieved as Vegeta prepares for his fight. Now, Vegeta still has the final flash, since he never showed that off in the first place, and he's also improved far beyond what he thought possible. The prince eagerly enters the ring, whilst Cell does so with far less vigor. The Bugman looks incredibly dissatisfied, but lets Vegeta go on his prideful tirade. Once the formalities are over, an intense fight breaks out, one very similar to Goku's fight with Cell in the original, though things quickly begin to go south for the Saiyan. Cell begins to grit his teeth and stops pulling any punches, and Vegeta begins taking some serious damage. Before long, the prince is spitting up blood, or spit if we want to keep this PG-13. Normally, Vegeta would rage out and start firing off ki blasts like crazy, but he simply isn't given the time to do so. Right as the prince is about to make some distance and charge up his final flash, the Bugman teleports in front of him, grabs his arms, and begins slowly pulling them. Vegeta is about to headbutt the bug, but Cell puts his foot on Vegeta's chest and starts pressing forward, increasing the pressure on his arms. The prince starts trying to fire ki blasts to free himself, even trying to maneuver and kick Cell. And that's when a loud pop sounds out. But he isn't even given time to process that, as Cell lets go of his limp arms, and he's sent flying into the ring by a single kick. Several ki blasts then rain down on the defenseless prince, then several fists, as he's punched into oblivion. All anybody can do is watch as Vegeta is turned into an unrecognizable mess. Trunks is about to fly in and help, but everyone else stops him as they all realize Vegeta has finally passed out, and thus Cell stops. Vegeta is disqualified via knockout. Now that is what I want to see. Go all out until your opponents are forced into submission. That goes for you too, ZFighters. Show no mercy, for my fighters surely won't. Everyone understands, but there's not much time to process that as Trunks instantly flies over and feeds his father a senzu. Well, he tries, but it's not exactly possible with his current facial structure. Either way, the Saiyan is pulled off the ring and Tien takes his place against 15. This fight is quite interesting as they're pretty even in terms of strength. This is where Tien, the last human Z-Fighter willing to fight, shows just how strong he is, putting 15 on his toes several times during their fight. However, as time goes on, something becomes very apparent, and it's the android's superior stamina. Tien is forced to use his Ki Koho, but 15's android barrier is just barely able to hold up, and with the Triclops already tired, a single spark cannon is able to fell him. Just like that, Tien was gone, vaporized into thin air by this android. And 15 didn't even make a big deal of it. He just pulled out his flask, took a sip, and walked off the arena. Most of the Z-Fighters give Tien a moment of silence, even A-Pool, who then enters the arena and stares down 14, who does much the same. The former Frieza Force soldier looks to his teammates and sighs to himself. He had to do his best in this tournament, and had to win it as soon as possible. For all of them. As soon as the match started, A-Pool rushed 14, and with a single strike, completely shattered the android. Something that had even Cell all shocked. Oh, now he was starting to get excited. He knew Goku would provide a nice fight, but should the Saiyan fail, he'd at least have this guy. Perhaps A-Pool would be able to match him in power. Yes, this Frieza wannabe could surely push Cell past his own limits, make him beyond perfect. The idea made Cell so excited he wanted to challenge the alien on the spot, but he had to wait. His time would come soon enough though. Next up was Zarbon's match against the Cell Jr., and this match goes surprisingly well. The commander dislikes having to fight what seems like a child, but he knows these aren't normal children. Zarbon looks over towards Pommel and knows he'd do anything to help protect him. He promises to make this quick, transforms, and charges the Cell Jr. Whilst it seems to keep up with him at first, Zarbon's ferocity causes it to trip up, allowing the beast to launch a large blast from his mouth that eviscerates the creature. Now, we'll be speedrunning this tournament, so Idu loses to a Cell Jr., not for lack of trying, but he simply doesn't have the strength. Piccolo wins his match, but just barely. Nappa wins his match due to his Makayan transformation, while Trunks wins in a rather brutal fashion. The Saiyan hybrid takes his time beating the poor Cell Jr. right in front of Cell himself, making sure to let the Bugman know he meant business. Anyways, Blueberry loses to a Cell Jr., whilst Pommel wins in a manner similar to his father. Now, the next fight between Goku and Gohan goes about as you'd expect. With some simple set the programmer scaling, we know Gohan surpassed Goku even prior to his Super Saiyan transformation, such as thinking Goku was holding back against Cell when he was indeed going all out in their battle. Basically, Gohan is just super humble like Minato. In a real fight, Goku easily keeps up with an all-out Goku, but he lacks the ability to knock him out. The two would be having fun if it weren't for the looming threat of Cell in the background. However, Goku has a talk with his son, akin to the one he has when Gohan is locked in a beam struggle with Cell in the original. The Elder Saiyan is able to convince his son that he has tremendous power and can win this tournament if he really went all out. While the fight lasts quite some time, Goku is able to eventually convince Gohan to use his full power, allowing him to knock Goku out with a few well-placed strikes. This, of course, catches Cell's attention, who gets even more excited at the prospect of getting to fight such strong fighters. He can barely contain himself. He then goes on to destroy 15 in just one strike. However, just as 15 is destroyed, 13 absorbs both his and 14's parts, transforming and immediately charging Gohan. Cell, already tired of waiting and also wanting a good fight, charges A-Pool, yelling out that he better not disappoint like the others. While most of the Z-Fighters would normally charge Cell and help out, the remaining Cell Juniors charge them, and a large battle breaks out between those who still remain. Trunks tries charging Cell and attempts to help out where he can, but is put in his place when the Bugman hits him with a full power kick. So Trunks and Pommel settle for protecting the others from Cell Juniors. Speaking of the little guys, whilst they're outnumbered by the Z-Fighters and Zarbon Force, many of them are too weak to put up any sort of fight. Basically, it comes down to Pommel, Zarbon, Trunks, Napple, Piccolo, and Mello of all people, versus like 12 Cell Juniors. It's 2-1, and while several of these fighters beat Cell Juniors before, that isn't quite the case now. Pommel, Zarbon, and Trunks are all able to hold their own, but the others soon get overwhelmed as well. And whilst Zarbon manages to defeat his two, he's soon faced with 6 Cell Juniors, and he too is overwhelmed. The commander watches on as the Cell Juniors disperse and begin assaulting anyone standing, including Pommel and Trunks. When Zarbon attempts to stand up again and help out, he's instantly blasted in the knee with a death beam, sending him back down. Trunks and Pommel each take down an additional Cell Junior before they get beaten down, breaking the total down to 7, though one seems to not be attacking anymore. Zarbon tries desperately to come up with a strategy, something, anything to take these monsters down, but nothing comes to mind. That is until he sees one of them fly away, splitting off from the group. He looks to see it picking up 16's head and seemingly talking to him. Wait, that's it. That's one way Zarbon could still help out. It'd be a pretty ugly thing to do, completely unbefitting a beautiful soldier like him. But if it had to be done, he'd be the one to make this move. Zarbon picked himself up and began flying at full speed towards a group of Cell Juniors, who were now kicking Pommel and Trunks on the ground. The group noticed Zarbon, and a couple casually shot some death beams towards him, them piercing his shoulder and ribs. But the reptile kept flying forward. More beams flew in, slowing him down, but Zarbon pushed himself harder, going as fast as he could, somehow going faster than before. Was he really going to do this? Was this the right thing to do? Of course it was. He'd do anything for Pommel, even if it was a rather desperate and brutal move like this. Zarbon surged forward as several more death beams pierced his body. If the blast didn't do it, these surely would. He grabbed onto the Cell Juniors, holding all 6 in his arms and flying up into the air. He was getting tired, but he screamed as loudly as he could, trying to stay awake and focused on his objective. Once the sky began to darken and space came into view, the reptile began to release every single bit of energy in his body. From the ground, Pommel could see a large sphere of energy, and then he felt it. Zarbon's ki was fading, and quickly. It was as if he were... Wait, no. No, he couldn't do that. Pommel flew into the air with renewed strength, flying as fast as he could, but he was too late. The sphere exploded, and once it was gone, Zarbon's body was revealed to be nothing but stone. The wind, as sparse as it was in the stratosphere, blew his remains away before Pommel could even touch him. The commander's son felt empty inside. Nothing but ifs were going through his head right now. If only he were stronger, he could have prevented this. If only he were faster. If only he had gone all out against the first couple of Cell Juniors, then he would have been able to take on the next few. But for as sad as Pommel was, the large explosions coming from the battle caught his attention. That's right. Zarbon did all this so they would survive. He must have thought they could do something. Trunks was still there, and all the others. There must be something they could do. Pommel flew down and assessed the situation. Gohan and 13 were having an intense battle, but it seemed like Gohan might win, if only barely. But their real problem was Cell. He was the ringleader here. The Bugman and A-Pool were fighting, with the Z-Force soldier now in his 5th form. They were on surprisingly even terms. Pommel was even tempted to say A-Pool was winning, but they could still use some help. First things first, they needed their sensu back, and the last Cell Junior had it. Pommel flew down and confronted the creature, powering up to his max power, whilst it looked up at him with fear. Good. It should fear him. He'll make it pay for what it's done. Give him the sensu, Vegeta Jr. They'll need it to defeat Cell, 16 said, and the Cell Jr., apparently named Vegeta Jr., threw the sensu at Pommel without any hesitation. There, you have your beans. Now leave this child alone. What? Why should I? Because there are more pressing matters to attend to. Cell cares not for this planet, and he can self-destruct just like I can. If his fight with A-Pool goes on like this, he'll end up using such a tactic to win. My explosion would be controlled. His will not. Jiro wanted this planet to be protected and safe, so our goals align. Stop Cell. Pommel wanted nothing more than to destroy this Cell Jr. and robot, but it was making sense. The reptile hybrid promised to come back and finish them, then flew off towards Trunks, who was far more injured than he was. With a quick senzu, Trunks was back to full strength, if not more so. Piccolo had already healed up and was rallying those who could stand, and Goku was now awake as well. The group senzued up, and once they were all set, they discussed what to do. While Goku believed Gohan and A-Pool could win, once it was revealed Cell could self-destruct, things quickly got serious. Whilst Piccolo was suspicious of 16, he did agree Cell was a wild card, unlike the mechanical androids. The group thought they could all blast him, but if he somehow survived, it could end up making him stronger, or simply realize he needs to destroy the Earth to win. But that's when Zarbon's voice filled their heads, or Pommel's, I should say. Pommel, do you remember the move I used on you when you went out of control? The one that would stun you? The wheels began turning in Pommel's head, but the only problem with using it is that they needed to get close to Cell. But that's when they saw Cell and A-Pool get into a large beam clash. So, Cell had gotten that mad, huh? He's trying to prove he's stronger in sheer power. This was their chance. Pommel could do it. He could stun Cell, open him up for an attack from everyone. Surely if A-Pool helped out, and maybe even Gohan, then they could vaporize him. Pommel explained his plan, saying they just needed to get him close to Cell, then hit him with everything they had. When Trunks asked about Pommel, he said he'd be fine. This was their one chance to defeat Cell. They had to take it. Goku tried to think of a way to use his instant transmission, but Piccolo said that would only be a brief distraction. They had to defeat Cell here and now, or else they'd be risking Earth later on. Pommel looked over towards Gohan, who now had a bloody nose and was seemingly getting serious, as he had his teeth grit and was now fighting ferociously. It actually reminded him of future Gohan a little. Hopefully after this, Gohan could live peacefully. Hopefully after this, future Gohan could do the same. Pommel clenched his fists and made sure everyone else was ready. Piccolo, Goku, and everyone else shot their respective beams towards Cell, and while it distracted him, they weren't enough to allow A-Pool to win. However, Pommel was able to get in close. Cell only noticed him once he was within inches of the Bugman. The android attempted to blow him away with a ki, but that's when a sword found itself buried through his stomach. Cell looked down to see Trunks holding said sword. Pommel understood why the Saiyan had come, and cursed him for being such a great friend, before cocking his arm back and punching Cell with all the power he had. Just as Pommel and Zarbon had hoped, Cell briefly went limp, causing his Kamehameha to begin dissipating, whilst Goku and the others charged up their attacks. Trunks and Pommel also began charging their attack. Their final savage burning dome wasn't as strong as they had hoped, but the beams from their friends made up for it. Cell, Pommel, and Trunks all disappeared in a brilliant flash of purple, blue, and yellow. A-Pool fell to the ground, cursing himself for allowing this to happen, especially to his friend's son. But the others said this was what Pommel had wanted, and apparently Trunks as well. Luckily, everyone could be brought back, but nobody wanted this outcome, especially not Gohan. If you think A-Pool was upset, Gohan, after seeing his friends sacrifice themselves, the only people close to his age especially, immediately went into Super Saiyan 2, finishing Android 13 with a single punch, completely eviscerating him. With that done, there was just one last thing to do, and that was deal with the remaining Cell Jr. and 16. We are no longer threats to you, aside from Goku. Vegeta Jr. and I simply wish to live in peace, maybe watch the birds, and hunt down Son Goku. Yeah, we can't have that. I'll make this quick. But just before Piccolo could blast the two, Bulma suddenly flew in on her airship. Wait! You can't just destroy two defenseless beings. Besides, I'd like to study these two. Piccolo didn't exactly like the idea of Bulma having 16's head, but he also didn't want to argue with her about it. Bulma simply swooped in and took 16's head, but when she spotted Vegeta Jr., she simply treated him like any ordinary kid, and he instantly clung to her. He seemed scared, and based on the way all the Z-Fighters looked at him, there was good reason to be. Piccolo said they couldn't let him get away, but that's when 16 interrupted. This one never fought. He simply joined the group to keep up appearances. He is defective, gentle. That is why I was able to get his attention. Let the little one go. He will not be a threat, and has no programming like myself. The Z-Fighters were going to mull it over, but Bulma simply said he was harmless, and took the Cell Jr. with her to go get Vegeta Sr. on her ship. She had just come to check on Vegeta and Trunks, but she ended up scoring an android and a nice little helper. What a great deal. With that, the remaining warriors helped clean up and take everyone to the lookout, and gather the Dragon Balls. Meanwhile, in Otherworld, Zarbon was searching the incoming souls for his son. He had left King Kai before Pommel's death, but he knew his son would succeed, as, well, he kinda had to. Plus, now Zarbon knew just how much it hurt to die, so Pommel could probably use some words of encouragement after going through that. Eventually, Zarbon spotted a familiar crown, and some rather nice green hair, and instantly knew the plan had worked. He ran up to greet Pommel and Trunks, instantly hugging his son with all the strength he had. "Oh, Pommel, I'm so sorry you had to do this, but it was the only plan I could think of. Please forgive me. I never wanted you to get hurt. I did everything I could, but you were the only one who knew that move, and... Father, I can't breathe." Oh, right. Sorry." Zarbon quickly stepped back, letting his son breathe for a second. "It's fine, Father. I wanted to do it. Besides, the Dragon Balls can wish us back, unlike with this guy." Pommel looked at Cell, who was standing in line behind them. He wasn't as fierce as before, but still looked at them with eyes that could kill. "Well, yes, you're right, but still, I apologize. I wish I could've..." "Stop that! You did everything you could. Everyone did. Everything is, and will be, okay. We did it, Dad." Hearing himself be called Dad made Zarbon slightly tear up, and the two shared a hug. A real, genuine hug, for the first time. While Trunks and Cell just sorta stood there, awkwardly. The three then made their way towards King Kai's, since it was far better than standing in a line of millions of, dead people. There, they trained and waited to be revived, which happened quicker than Zarbon thought. He didn't even get a chance to learn Kaioken. Once back in the living world, everyone partied, having a massive feast to celebrate the fact that they made it through this whole debacle. Gohan and A-Pool still felt guilty, but everyone said it really wasn't their fault. Tien felt ashamed he still couldn't do anything, but the various ZFighters congratulated him for being so brave, for just standing up to the androids, unlike them. This made the Triclops feel somewhat better, but he was beginning to think his fighting days were numbered. But all was not lost, as he looked towards Gohan, Pommel, and Trunks, and thought about the next generation. Perhaps it was time that he began teaching some young prodigies himself. As for Trunks and Pommel, they enjoyed their time, but also knew they had to get back to the future, and fight Cell once again. It was a good thing they found out about his self-destruct option. Now they had a strategy, but luckily it didn't involve any self-sacrifice. About a week passes by, with everyone slowly calming down from the ordeal, and then the day of Trunks and Pommel's departure comes. Vegeta and Trunks have their little goodbye. Meanwhile, Zarbon and Pommel are doing their best to hold back their tears. First they shake hands, then they go in for a hug, and finally they sob before saying a proper goodbye. Zarbon makes sure Pommel knows just how proud he is, and that future Zarbon is an imbecile if he doesn't feel the same way. The two promise to see each other again, and then Pommel leaves for his own timeline. With that, several of the Z-Force members say it's time they leave as well. Zarbon knew this day would come, as he had promised they'd liberate the worlds of Frieza's lingering influence. Unfortunately, just as Zarbon begins packing, and tells Sunday he'll be back eventually, she reveals a small bump on her stomach. With the future filled with possibilities, especially for Zarbon, that's where we're going to be leaving things for right now. If you liked this part, I'd appreciate it if you carried around the like button's head, or maybe even made a heroic sacrifice to take out the subscribe button. But even if you don't, thank you guys for Thank you guys for getting to this part of the video. It really means a lot, and helps the channel out more than you could know. I really enjoyed writing this part, and while I could have made it 2 separate parts, I figured you guys deserved a little more since this is so late. Now, the real challenge will be getting all this edited together before Saturday. I'm trying to get this all done in advance, but we're already at 561 subscribers, So that Yamcha what if might be coming sooner than anyone expected. Look, I knew this level of growth would come eventually, but it's still crazy to see. Thank you guys. Even if I'm not celebrating y'all every single day, I kind of think of each video as a celebration of sorts. That's why I have these little rambling parts, just to talk as, well, myself, and to appreciate how far I've come, along with all of you guys who keep watching and listening to this pretty nerdy fan fiction. Anyways, I should probably get to recording and editing this part. Well, I guess just editing now. You guys have a good day or night wherever you are. That's it for now. Bye bye.